You diligently wash out your yogurt containers. You meticulously sort your plastics from your paper. You feel a sense of satisfaction as you toss it all into the recycling bin, imagining it magically transforming into something new. It's a comforting ritual, a small act to help save the planet. But what if this comforting ritual is actually an elaborate illusion? The truth is, most of what we put in those blue bins doesn't actually get recycled. It doesn't morph into pristine park benches or sleek new water bottles. Instead, it ends up in landfills, incinerators, or worse, polluting our oceans and infiltrating our own bodies. The recycling system, as it currently stands, is broken. The uncomfortable reality is that we've been led astray by a well-intentioned but ultimately misleading message. We've been told that recycling is the answer to our plastic problem, but in reality, it's only a small part of a much larger, more complex issue. The statistics are sobering. Globally, only 9% of plastic ever produced has been recycled. Let that sink in for a moment. 9%. Despite our best efforts, the vast majority of plastic waste ends up in landfills, where it can take hundreds of years to decompose, leaching harmful chemicals into the environment. 12% is incinerated, releasing toxic pollutants into the air we breathe. And a staggering 79% ends up in landfills or the environment, polluting our land and oceans, threatening wildlife, and ultimately, coming back to haunt us. This is not a sustainable path. Even when we do manage to recycle plastic, it's often downcycled into lower-grade materials with limited uses. This means that a plastic bottle can only be recycled a limited number of times before it ultimately ends up in a landfill. The idea of a closed-loop system, where materials are perpetually recycled, remains largely aspirational. Our recycling journey begins at home, but it's at material recovery facilities, MRFs, where the real sorting magic, or lack thereof, happens. These bustling facilities are tasked with separating the recyclable from the non-recyclable, a monumental task that is often hampered by contamination and the sheer volume of waste. Contamination is a major issue. When food residue, liquids, or other materials end up mixed with recyclables, it can contaminate entire batches, rendering them unrecyclable. Even a greasy pizza box can ruin an entire load of paper. This highlights the importance of proper cleaning and sorting at home, but it also exposes the limitations of our current recycling infrastructure. Adding to the challenge is the fact that not all plastic is created equal. Different types of plastics require different recycling processes, and many MRFs simply don't have the technology or capacity to handle the complexity. As a result, much of what arrives at these facilities is either downcycled into lower-grade materials or, worse, landfilled. So here's the thing, not all plastic is created equal. I mean, yeah, it might all look the same at first glance, but there are actually like 7 different types, and each one has its own quirks when it comes to recycling. For example, polyethylene terephthalate, PET, which is number 1, is super common in soda bottles and is usually recyclable. But then you've got things like polystyrene number 6 and that stuff. It's a total nightmare to recycle. And what's worse is, sometimes the recycling symbols can be kind of misleading. Just because there's a triangle on it doesn't mean it's actually recyclable in your area. So yeah, understanding the types of plastic is a big deal if we want to make smarter choices and reduce waste. It's not just about tossing stuff in the blue bin, it's about knowing what really belongs there. Okay, so here's the thing. Recycling sounds like the perfect solution, right? But in reality, it's way more complicated. Most plastic isn't actually recyclable in a meaningful way. Like, only about 9% of plastic waste ever produced has been recycled. The rest, it ends up in landfills, incinerators, or worse, our environment. And even when we do recycle, the process can degrade the plastic, making it less useful over time. So yeah, recycling helps, but it's definitely not the silver bullet we've been led to believe. So, what happens to all that plastic that doesn't get recycled? Well, a lot of it ends up in our oceans. And get this, over time it breaks down into these tiny particles called microplastics. They're literally everywhere. Scientists have found them in fish, in drinking water, and even in the air we breathe. I mean, we're talking about plastic making its way into our food chain. It's kind of terrifying when you really think about it. Alright, so what can we actually do about all this? First off, we need to reduce our reliance on single-use plastics. That means choosing reusable options whenever we can, like bringing our own bags, bottles, and containers. But it's not just about individual choices. We also need stronger policies, like bans on certain plastics and incentives for companies to use sustainable materials. Innovation plays a big role too. There are startups out there creating compostable packaging and plastic alternatives made from things like algae or mushrooms. It's super cool stuff and it gives me hope. At the end of the day, it's about shifting how we think about plastic. Like, we've gotten so used to convenience that we forget about the consequences. But if we start seeing plastic as something valuable, something we shouldn't just throw away, it changes everything. We need to build a culture that values sustainability over disposability. And yeah, it's going to take all of us, governments, businesses, and everyday people, working together to make that happen. But honestly, I believe we can do it.